Hello fellow filmmakers, this is Niklas from the media division, and today we're gonna test the EVA1, the brand new cinema camera from Panasonic. And to make it a bit more interesting for you, we're gonna film not just anybody, but the most famous hippie family of Hamburg. It's the Orangutans from Hagenbeck. So get ready for some full frontal nudity and some trumping hairdos. Have fun. Before we are going to jump into the footage, which is going to happen in just 1 second, I promise, I want to say a couple of things about the setup and about the place I shot this. First of all, of course, this is EVA. I used the Sigma 100 to 400 for the most part, and some few shots with the Sigma 18 to 35, which gave me a good range on all this. This is a bit slow. So I was quite happy that there was a lot of light. Sometimes I didn't have enough light, so more about that later. Instead of the small HD that you see here, I used the Shogun Inferno, and I used the Shogun Inferno to record directly to ProRes over HDMI. I wouldn't say it would be absolutely necessary. We compare later the internal log next to the ProRes HQ, and it looks, for all that matters, it looks absolutely the same. For me, it's more convenience that I can see them in quick time, and it's just nicer to work with, and I don't need to render proxies. This is filmed at Hagenbeck, which is a zoo, and some of you might think, oh, this is wrong for some reason, but Hagenbeck is just wonderful. It's a wonderful station where they actually breed the orangutans. None of these animals have been took out of the wild. They all have been bred in this zoo or in other zoos, and they are doing exemplary work to preserve this wonderful species. But now, let's visit some wonderful fellows. So first let's talk a bit about the footage, about the grading, which we were gonna do in Resolve, and then I'm gonna go into stuff like handling, usability, and a bit of criticism, of course, and how to make this camera even better. During this, I will jump between this view, the screen recording, and the footage itself. The footage that didn't make it in the film itself, but is good, or the technical stuff, will not be graded. It will only have an ACES workflow grade on it. All shots are captured in Vlog, if it's via HDMI on the Shogun Inferno, or if it's internally. Brought into Resolve, it's going to be the ACES workflow. It's very easy to dial in, and it gives a quite decent result. I show you right here the project settings that you need to dial in, and everything you throw on the timeline looks good just right from the start. I kept the grade for this a primary grade because I have a limited time for it, and I wanted to not lie. So it's just a bit of color tweaking. It's a little bit of LUT in there that separates the dark colors better from the brighter colors. It's a teeny weeny bit of a teal and orange grade in there. So our first subject that I want to talk about is light and dual ISO. Marketed as one of the main features of EVA, I think there's quite a misunderstanding about it, and I had some misunderstanding about it too. And particularly in this shoot, I think I would have done some things differently if I knew better about dual ISO and how it is good to work with in situations like these. Many people in the Facebook group, usually coming from narrative work, always say light your stuff. And of course, light your stuff is always a good idea. You need enough light. You need to feed the sensor light. But there's situations, and let's take this for example, where you can't. You just can't. You can't bring light, any light that would be strong enough to do anything on the distances you have to go here would be way too huge, way too expensive, and it would destruct the animals, so you just can't do it. This is where you have to work with available light. And if you only get one day to work there, you can't even wait for a bright day. You just gotta work with it. And as you see this footage, the dome is matte. It can open, so on warm summer days it opens so the orangutans can be under open sky. But on days like this, it is closed and it has a diffusing quality to it. So this might be actually the largest diffuser in the world, and it gives a brilliant soft light overall, just not too much of it. It might look very bright in some scenes, but I say it was less bright than you might think, especially because the trees would give some shadows down on our friends. Secondary, like I said before, the Sigma 100 to 400, while it's very sharp, I was pretty happy with that result. It is quite slow. It has a range that goes from f5 to f6.3. That is not good. And I was really in serious need of extra light in a couple shots. And if I tried then to use dual ISO, and I did in some shot with amazing results, and I will show you right now. So here's Tuan sitting in the shadows, and we're already at f6, and we can open wider at ISO 800. There is quite a bit of grain in there, and a little switch, bam, at 2500 is amazing detail and much less grain. So this way you can compensate for higher frame rates like 60 frames per second and for higher f-stops, as long as there is a bit of light in the scene. I was a bit afraid because I saw some grainy stuff before, even in my footage, so I was a bit too afraid to use it. But if there is light, you can uplift it, and with quite amazing results. And you get less grain out of ISO 2500 than you would get out of the native 800, at least in this specific example. Where you're really gonna need more light is in the higher frame rates. 60 is still quite easy to compensate, and you can kick in the 2500 ISO and get pretty good results in situations like this. But if you go higher into the 120, 240, I'm going to show you some examples in a thing, you will need tons of light to make it look good. So this is very soft, and I was in dire need of more light, and I used the 2500, and this is where it, at least in this situation, it doesn't work. It makes the picture even softer. You get a lot of grain. So, of course, if everybody knows you need a lot of light with high frame rates, and this was just not given here. This is why I didn't include it in the main film. Here we have a good example for a nice movement. I'm on the tele, and we are on f6, and it just has too little light, and that harms the scene. But even considering that, it's still very soft, and there's very little detail in the hair. So I think this is mostly due to compression. And even if we are taking a wider lens that is much faster, this is at a very low f point, 1.7, 1.8, I'm sorry. And we see that the picture is still very soft. So it's very much a compression problem. If we go to higher frame rates, like the 240, it doesn't make any sense to try to film with a tele without filming right into the light. It is very, very soft and hard, compressed. So this is interesting for studying movements of animal, like in this case, but it's only good for very, very specific kinds of slow motion filming. I really hope that Panasonic will give us raw or at least ProRes recording on a Shogun Inferno for the 120 frames or 220 frames. So at least the 120 frames like the VariCam does have. I hope this is technically possible to do this with EVA2, because it does look amazing. It's usable for a nice private project, but I wouldn't necessarily run to a customer and say like, wow, I can do nice 120 frames per second shots. I think EVA is fine until 60 frames right now. No problem, looks brilliant, especially recorded on a Shogun. But 120 is already, it's even for full HD, it's too soft. Again, might look much, much better with way more light, but in a situation like this, it was unfortunately unusable. Maybe better with less compression. Panasonic, I hope we're getting somewhere there. Usability. There was a lot of talk lately, mainly in the EVA1 Facebook group. By the way, I put a link in the description. If you want to join the discussion, get tips and tricks, and it's a very lively, I love them. I'm the admin of that group, so please join us. I put a link in the description. There's a lot of talk about the screen, and I have to say it's true in a way. It is quite reflective, and it's not very bright, and it was bright enough on that day in that situation that it was really hard to, even with a hood, it was hard to get critical focus. Of course, I had a Shogun on it that has 1,500 nits, and you can see in direct daylight still what you're doing. But peaking functions and so, and the quite nice punch-in that you just have on a button, I would have loved to use that more, and I couldn't in that setup. When you record to the Shogun over HDMI, of course you can't just take the SDI and have all the LCD functions on there, then you would have to record internally, which kind of voids the idea of having an external recorder in the first place. So you're better off with an external monitor, which is not really like, maybe another camera has a better screen. I had the GH5, it didn't work much better. It was just as invisible as the EVA's display was. And I'm pretty sure if you had other examples, FS7 or C200, C300, there are just situations where it's too bright for them as well, and it's just more or less of a disaster to work with them. So you're gonna need an EVF or external monitor on cam, like I have here with this small HD. This is the 501, it's only got HDMI. There's the 502 with a SDI. This is a bit brighter than the internal display, not that much, and it has all the features that you would need. It has LUT support, you can punch in, you have peaking in all the stuff, and you have D-squeezes that I think you can't do internally either. So this is an interesting option, and it's not that expensive compared to other solutions. It's not daylight capable. If you want to have something daylight capable, you need something high bright, definitely over 1000 nits. Small HD has some very interesting, the 503 and the 803, but those are way beyond $2,000. So, and especially with high bright displays, you always have to consider the power draw, and power draw is almost as high and sometimes even higher than EVA itself. You just have to take that into your account when you pack your batteries. And of course you have to power them by themselves, because EVA doesn't have any power out, so you can't power both on one battery. Talking about power, one thing I was amazed with is EVA's all over runtime. I started shooting about 30 minutes past 9 and I was done around 2 o'clock, so I shot for hours and hours and hours, and as you can see here, the battery showed, that's the bigger battery, by the way. It's the quite larger, the bit larger one. It's the AGVBR89. That's 8,850 milliamps, and it is a bit bigger than the battery that comes with the EVA. It's a bit heavier, but nothing out of the ordinary. And that took me through the whole shoot, and you would think like, oh, that must be like on the last view. It still had one light on the check button outside, and if you while looking in the menu, I saw that it actually it showed half of the load. I have no idea how much longer this would have lasted me, but it looked like it would have lasted all afternoon if it had to. I don't know, but I'm quite amazed. So this is what you get when you don't have a massive bright display like the Ursa Mini does, which I think wouldn't have worked in a situation like this, but would have cost a lot of weight and a lot of energy, so you would have to swap around V-Log batteries all day. While this is, even with such a big lens, it's still, I mean, nice and handy. I had a shooting in a cellar recently where I shot 50 minutes just out of the hand with IS, and I don't think I would want to do that with an Ursa Mini. So this is where EVA actually shines, and I think it's an amazing camera and it does an amazing picture. Again, I hear that it's just a larger GH5, and it's really not. Just for the fun of it, here you see a shot of the GH5 and about the same situation that EVA has, and EVA gets so much more detail and gradations, and the dynamic range is just so much better. Here in this whole segment I had lots of scenes which are very, very bright and very, very dark at the same time, and dynamic range was it just wouldn't break. With the GH5, you're always like, oh, that blew out. Oops, that blew out. You still always have to monitor your waveform to really make sure that it doesn't blow out. With EVA, I was like looking down, and there was always enough in the waveform to say like, oh, no, it didn't blow. And you can see here, for example, in this example, yeah, that is blown out, right? No, it's not. You can actually bring it back and tell how many segments there are in that actual window. I think that is quite amazing, and this is where the GH5 just fails. Some say that the GH5 is sharper coming out of a cam, and it is. From what I saw, if you just shoot them side by side, the same subject, GH5 looks sharper. Of course, it is even sharper when you dial down to -5. I think that you cannot completely switch off the internal sharpening of the GH5, which you should. While in EVA there is no sharpening in cam applied, and you can very much see that in the footage. And cinematic cameras are not sharp. You can watch any movie right now, and there's a lot of detail in it, but it's not sharp. So if you want to have that sharp image, you can. And I think I showed it quite well in a documentary like this, where you want to have the colors and the bang, the contrast, and a lot of sharpness. You can apply it. It works very well. And then, because there's more detail actually in there than there's in the GH5, it just looks stunning. So EVA gives you the choice to have a very sharp image if you want to, and to have a more softer filmic image if you prefer that for that project. So that is nice. What I really miss about in the EVA compared to something like the GH5 is actually that you can't have presets that you can dial in very quickly. In the GH5, it has this brilliant wheel here, and you can put your preset on it and say like, this is 24 frames per second, this is 60 frames per second. You can even, through ISO or higher aperture, compensate for the less light. So on a shoot, you just go like this, and you don't have to actually reboot the cam to do any of this. You can just switch between it. Even with 300 or more, you can always just switch on the spot. You can't do that with EVA, at least not at the moment. If you change between 50 and 25, you have to power cycle the camera. Of course, you could just go in 50 and turn on variable frame rate. So you're on a base frame rate of 50 Hertz and then just go down to 25. That would work, but you don't have audio on the 25 then. And if you feed your signal to an external recorder like the Shogun Inferno, it will still record 50 frames per second. So basically what I would like to have is an option to do presets. And if it's only possible in menus, I totally get that. Just make them accessible very easy. Just load it full where you say like, oh, this is my preset for this is my preset for that, this is my preset. Do it so we can name them themselves, so you find your way around quickly. And it could be even on top of the list in the menu over system, so you reach them very fast. You could also maybe put them on the user wheel that you can just dial through within a display. This is this. And the coolest thing on earth would be to have a dial like this or something similar in functionality, even with way more settings. I would like to have like 10 when I use the GH5. I would certainly want to have like 20 on the EVA for sure. If a dial like that would be possible to put in an alternative hand grip, that may be sold as an add-on with another couple of nice features on there too. I would really much enjoy that. Just an idea, Panasonic, if you're listening, that would be nice. If you want to know more about EVA, if you have suggestions, tips or anything, just want to inform yourself and be part of an amazing community that we Panasonic users have. We have a great group on Facebook, I mentioned it before. It's the Panasonic AU EVA1 Facebook group, and I put the link in the description. Please become a member if you're into this. I love the image of the EVA. I will put it through the paces in my next projects, and I think it's an amazing tool, and with our help it can only get better. So this is all from today and from Hagenbeck Zoo and our orangutan family. I hope you find this useful. I would like to thank Hagenbeck's Tierpark for giving me the opportunity to do this today and to have this lovely experience for myself and for you as well. Please subscribe if you liked it, and see you around next time. Bye.